Letty mashed the last of the strawberries into a pan with a couple tablespoons of water and a tablespoon of sugar to make a little sauce for the crepes. I explained that these were crepes, French pancakes. And when the first one was done, I took it out of the pan, rolled it up with some jam, cut it into pieces, and asked, "Who wants to try the first piece?" Well, nobody moved. Watching as she poured the batter into the pan and began working it from side to side, we waited, hungry for both the crepes and the story. I was crushed. Here I had gone to all this trouble getting the darn gas burner, bringing in all the makings, and now the little stinkers refused to eat them. She flipped the first crepe over. I offered it again and again, but no one moved, so I asked, "For heaven's sake, why don't you want to at least try them?" And you know what they said? She plunked a crepe down on Jack's dish as we sat waiting expectantly for the answer. They said because they weren't round. Confused, I asked, "Weren't round?" "Yes, weren't round, like their mothers made," Letty explained, pouring more batter into the pan. They were talking about the kind you put into a toaster, the round frozen pancakes. I don't know about those students, but we found the peach crepes, though slightly lopsided, to be a triumph. Later that morning, the four of us decided to take a walk out to the sunflower fields we could see from our bedroom windows. The road wound out along the river through the empty fairgrounds and past a collection of farm buildings. 4-foot-high bushes of lavender and spikes of pink hollyhocks leaned against antique stone walls, and purple hydrangea languished over moss-covered steps the present inhabitants hadn't used in years. Beyond and into the heart of the fields, with giant rolls of hay resplendent in the sun on one side, sunflowers on the other, it was like stumbling into a Van Gogh painting. I don't think I have seen quite as peaceful a place as this, ever. I don't know what I expected, but this was a feeling I hadn't anticipated. Sunflowers, where I grew up and even where I live now, were something you'd see from time to time by the side of someone's house, or a few stalks at the end of a garden, but here you could stroll through them for an hour and still not be home. Everywhere I looked was beauty. The fields, the houses, the gardens. This incredible elegance survived centuries of invaders. First with crossbow, then with tank, and still, after it all, had endured and continued to flourish. The walk into the fields of sunflowers and rolled hay bales became a daily routine for me. Farm dogs came out to bark as I passed, but after the third or fourth day, they began to recognize me and only came out to look and then returned to the shade. Lunch, Moroccan olive salad. That afternoon, we sat on the terrace in the bright Touraine sun, enjoying a simple salad of rocket lettuce, the Moroccan olives, a few tomatoes, and 4 hard-boiled eggs, with a semi-soft cheese grated over the top. Letty mixed up a dressing with the juice of 2 lemons, about half a cup of olive oil, a couple of smashed garlic cloves, some salt, pepper, and a bunch of fresh basil leaves. We sipped white wine and ate strawberries. Mona had spent the morning painting in the garden. Wearing a wraparound and a straw hat, she was beginning to look like a painting herself. We continued to be concerned about Madeline and Helmet. By 3 that afternoon, they called from Paris to say the plane, though 9 hours late, had finally arrived, and they would be on the 6:30 train that evening at Saint-Pierre-de-Corps. You could tell from Madeline's voice that everything was not perfect. "Wait till you get here," Mona promised encouragingly. "Just wait till you see the house." In the short space between Wednesday and Sunday, the 4 of us had become a tight, happy, and resourceful unit. While we eagerly awaited the arrival of our friends, we also felt a certain apprehension. Though we had shared a number of pleasurable dinners, none of us had ever lived together, and this present mix had turned out so well that we worried the newcomer's disgruntled state of mind would affect the completely carefree feeling the 4 of us had created these first couple of days. By 6 o'clock, Jack and I had left for the station at Saint-Pierre-de-Corps. Madeline saw us first and called out, "Jack, buddy, here we are." Exhausted, they dragged their bags to the car as we ran to help them. Happy and cheerful, I was even annoyingly perky as we loaded their suitcases into the trunk. "Well, you two look great. I think a night on the floor of Logan Airport did wonders for the both of you." Madeline looked me square in the eye and stuck out her tongue. She and Jack got into the back seat, and Helmut, who stands well over 6 feet, wedged himself into the front. If it seems a little cramped, you can hang one leg out the window, I suggested as I started the car. I'll be fine, it was the first words he had spoken to us. Crossing the bridge onto Winston Churchill Boulevard, I began a commentary mimicking a tour guide. Not quite Pa Kettle, not exactly Mr. Chips. There's the mall and a Toys R Us. That's a water tower. I could have just as easily been describing Dover, New Hampshire. Over there, but you can't see it from here. The river, well, it's over there someplace. Neither one of them seemed amused. Jack inquired about the trip. Ugh, Madeline began, still exasperated by the galling indifference of the airline to their comfort. After all of the ineptitude at Logan when we finally got on the plane, the third one they brought. And 9 hours late, mind you, the pilot comes out of the cockpit and matter-of-factly tells us, look, I'm only the pilot. If you have any complaints, call this number. And then he gives us a phone number. A phone number, not even an apology. Helmut's face was expressionless, but he began to recover a little bit, taking an interest as, spinning through the traffic circle, crossing the bridge over the River Cher, I hung a right on Route D7 with as much ease as if I had been doing it all my life. You really know your way around here. I'm impressed, he said, breaking a silence. Coming from the owner of a professional driving service, the compliment was appreciated that much more. We had left the busy city boulevard behind and were heading into the evening light that reflected the color of hayfields. Madeline and Helmut slowly began to relax. Everything was being taken care of from here on out. On the outskirts of 7 Years, I pulled off the main road onto Rue de la Liberté, a few blocks from our house. At a run-down, barn-like building with broken machinery in the yard, I slowed the car to a near stop as though I was about to park. This is it, I said with great enthusiasm. Well, what do you think? This guy's funny. This is it, I said with great enthusiasm. Well, what do you think? Expressionless once again, Helmut sat silently. Madeline muttered in unenthusiastic, ah, only kidding, I said, continuing up the road. No one laughed at the joke. A moment later, I stopped in front of the maison, honked the horn, and Mona opened the gates. We drove up the drive and parked in front of the terrace steps. Letty came out to greet the new arrivals. It was as if whatever aggravations they had endured in their long ordeal had been left outside when we closed and locked the gates. Proudly, we led our friends on a tour through the house and garden. Their reactions were the same as ours had been that first day. While they showered, Letty and Mona set the table for dinner with the blue and white Limoges, and Jack picked a bouquet of flowers for the center. Refreshed and serene, the newcomers joined us on the terrace where we shared a bottle of wine. Helmut's face relaxed into a wide smile as he and Madeline recounted the trials of their money-saving charter. Even they were able to somehow find the humor as we alternately gasped, then roared at the telling of every indignity. Dinner. Cassoulet with sausage and saucons. Vanilla apple tart. I wanted the food their first night to reflect as much of France as could be put onto a plate. A cassoulet, or my version thereof, a dish more native to Provence than here, seemed perfect. The wide flat beans, saucons, had been soaked overnight, then boiled until they were soft. I saved the water they were cooked in, adding a couple of cups of white wine, a few cut-up potatoes, 6 lengths of herbed sausage cut into bite-sized pieces, 5 or 6 carrots, some small green onions from the garden, a generous amount of garlic, a handful of fresh rosemary and thyme, a 1/4 cup of tomato paste, and salt and pepper. I put it into a hot oven at about 450 degrees. For 15 to 20 minutes to let it brown up, stirred it, then covered it and turned the oven down to 350, letting it cook for an hour. I served the cassoulet with baguettes and tons of butter, and for dessert, another apple tart, this time flavored with pure vanilla. Helmut had barely shoveled in the last bite of tart when he said, I'm sorry, folks, but I've had it. I've got to sleep. Me too, Madeline agreed. Wake me in 2 days. Hugging us all goodnight, exhausted, they headed for their bedroom. Monday, July 20th. Breakfast. Pleurettes omelette, toasted baguette with Emmenthal. There were a handful of pleurettes, little mushrooms, left from a day before, and having walked down to the patisserie for a couple of baguettes, I hurried back to the kitchen to make a mushroom omelet for the others who were not yet up. I chopped a green onion and a couple of shallots into the pan with 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a hunk of butter, simmered them until they had become soft, added the pleurettes and sautéed them until they had begun to brown. Whipping together a dozen eggs with the last of the creme fraiche, about a cup and a half, and a little salt and pepper and fresh basil, I poured it over the pleurettes and onions, then covered the pan, turned the heat very low, and let it cook for about 15 minutes. While the omelet was cooking, I cut the baguettes lengthwise, covered them with slices of Emmenthal, and put them under the broiler until they had toasted up bubbly and the edges of the bread and cheese became crispy. By 9 o'clock, Madeline and Helmut appeared at the table, completely rested, ravenously hungry, and very anxious to see the countryside. After breakfast, we drove into Berlin-Meyer, where we had found a patisserie that had the most exceptional stock of the most exceptional stock of dulcet delicacies I had ever seen. Dulcet. The array of confections, breads, pastries, and candies was a feast. There were long, shiny baguettes, crusty, round pain de campagnes, oblong loaves, thick-crusted wheat breads, and rolls baked together on a long loaf glistening like toasty leaves. In the cold case were brightly decorated chocolate and lemon mousse cakes covered with a raspberry gelatin. There were patisserie cream-stuffed eclairs, Napoleons, and cocoa-dusted edible boxes filled with chocolate mousse like we had eaten our first night in 7 years. There were trays of confections that looked more like edible toys than pastries. Little meringues in the shape of mice and swans dipped in chocolate, whipped cream cakes and fruit tarts covered with strawberries and kiwis, peaches and apples, or a beautiful and colorful mix of 4 fruits, all masterfully decorated. My mother, who is 82 years old and has been widowed for 3 years, lives alone in a small town in Illinois. Before we left for France, I had called to ask what I could send her. "Oh, something to eat," she replied quickly. "But don't forget, I'm not supposed to have anything with nuts in it anymore." The saleslady offered a cordial, "Bonjour, monsieur," and probably asked what she could help me with. Oh, she didn't offer, I'm sorry. I thought when she offered a cordial, like she offered like a little glass of sherry or something. The saleslady offered a cordial, "Bonjour, monsieur," and probably asked what she could help me with. Struggling with my French, I tried to explain what I wanted. "A box of candies to send my mother. No nuts, please." "Ah, oui, monsieur." I picked out the box I wanted. It had pictures of the chateau on it, and the saleslady began pointing out the selections. "Café, crème au chocolat, framboise, aux fraises," she asked courteously, adding to the little box a few chocolates at a time, as I nodded in approval at each singling out. In the short time since we had been talking, the shop, which had been empty when we arrived, began filling up with patrons. If they were becoming impatient, there was no sign of it. As I selected the different candies, I could not help but think of my mother's advanced age and the realization that time was now closing in on her. Images of her from other younger times suddenly filled my thoughts, and between the selections of buttercreams and coconut creams, and unnoticed in the middle of all the beautiful cakes and tarts and pastries, I could feel my face begin to flush and my eyes well up with tears. I'm going to reread that paragraph. I love how he keeps mentioning how, like in France, people are not in a hurry. "In the short time since we had been talking, the shop, which had been empty when we arrived, began filling up with patrons. If they were becoming impatient, there was no sign of it. It's funny to me because, to me, like in the United States, this is the reader talking, Rick Still. In the United States, like, I'm always like, wow, why aren't people in a hurry? Like, you should be in a hurry. There's an immense stream of human beings that have business to transact. Be in a hurry. Anyway, as I selected the different candies, I could not help but think of my mother's advanced age and the realization that time was now closing in on her. Images of her from other younger times suddenly filled my thoughts, and between the selections of buttercreams and coconut creams, and unnoticed in the middle of all the beautiful cakes and tarts and pastries, I could feel my face begin to flush and my eyes well up with tears. The saleslady finished packing up the little box. Paquet cadeau? She asked, meaning did I want her to gift wrap the box. Par courrier? By mail. Oui, madame, I replied, deflecting my eyes to hide the sadness. She began to double wrap the box for mailing, first in a bright green cellophane tied with a pink ribbon, then into another box tied with yet another ribbon. I thanked her, uttered a merci, mesdames et messieurs, to the other patrons for their patience, and left to wait outside for my companions. This guy, he's a class act. A church stood just across from the patisserie. With my little package of candy in hand, I went in and sat down in one of the pews. A recording of a Bach cantata filled the space, and soft light streamed through the ancient stained glass windows. I thought about how much my mother would have loved the food in France, and how, when I was a little boy, she would buy me a dime's worth of cheese or smoked fish when we went shopping just so I could taste it. It was through her that I had acquired my appreciation of food. The others soon found me, and we quietly walked through the old building, examining every dark corner, admiring the statues and paintings. As we were leaving, Letty discovered a message board filled with handwritten notes to loved ones who had passed away. Our attention was caught by a note from a little boy to his grandfather, which said in French, "Dear Grandpa, I miss you every day and wish you were still here. I know that you and everyone in heaven would be happy to know that France has won the Coupe du Monde. Please say hello to God for me." While I was immersed in my childhood reminiscences inside the church, my friends had purchased 7 eclairs, 3 chocolate and 4 coffee. We shared them convivially in the car on the way back.